It's always good to begin a sermon by taking note of a mistake that I made. It was Peter Cowles who read Torah this morning, not Stephen, because Stephen had the Aliyah, but Peter read the Torah this morning. So just in case anybody was keeping score on their scorecard, it was single by Peter to left field. We thank Peter for reading Torah so beautifully this morning. So remember the other day I was talking about softball, and I told you that I was grateful that I wasn't picked last, but I never told you about how I actually played. I hit a single, double, and a triple, and made 3 double plays. I'm lying. I hit 2 ground balls, 1 for a double play, and dropped 3 balls. But wouldn't the story have been better had I done so well and you could have then said, wow, at least he's a good softball player. Neil Postman, professor at NYU, taught something really powerful. How we talk is how we think, not the other way around. How we talk is how we think. Now, we can debate the point, but let's just sit with the idea for just a minute. When Postman said any significant change in our ways of talking can lead to change in a point of view. That's why we battle all the time over labels. Abortionists, pro-life, pro-choice, patriot, terrorist, insurrectionist. The words we use convey meaning, and if we can convince others to use our words, then perspectives change. In July, Joshua Hunt wrote in the New York Times an incredibly eye-opening and challenging article entitled, "How I Became a Pathological Liar." In this article, he described the embarrassment of being poor. He wrote, "If I ever thought that of these lies, I soon came to see them as part of the etiquette of poverty, a means of getting by for the poor and also the gift we give to the rich, a practice that lets us avoid talking about uncomfortable differences between us. Like many poor people, we were subject to the uncertainty and chaos that comes with a lifetime of bad jobs and worse landlords. And we moved often. The next time we moved, I was careful not to let any of my friends know where I lived. When someone else's parents took me home from a sleepover or a sporting event, I'd give them directions to a nicer house in a nicer neighborhood, then walk home after they drove away, sometimes many miles. Instead of a string of low-wage jobs, my mother had a career. And instead of alcoholism, my father had health problems. My fear of being seen for who I really was grew stronger, and it became almost limbic. It was pure instinct, like an animal sensing a predator. And when my friends asked about it the next day, it took an elaborate string of lies to convince them that I hadn't lost my mind. The fact that I was losing my mind was something that never occurred to me. And Hunt continued, and this is probably the part that applies most aptly to many of us. The first lie we tell is usually about something meaningless. It might impress someone, or it just might move the conversation forward. He writes, most of my lies were so inconsequential that they probably never even registered with the people who were hearing them. For me, they became more false biography to internalize. More false biography to internalize. What Hunt is saying is that lies begin as something we tell others, and then they become something we tell ourselves. Then most powerfully he writes, instead of the person I was, or even the person I wanted to be, I moved through the world as the person my lies made me. My facility with lies of survival informed my more self-serving lies. And believe it or not, we all do it. Whether we are prepared to admit it, or even if we're capable of realizing it, we all do it. Each and every one of us embellishes, expands, takes license to tell our stories the way we want them to be. We say they're harmless alterations, but I suggest to you today that they are not. As the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, one of my most favorite texts called Mesilat Yesharim, the Path of the Righteous, explains to us, we have to be careful in our language. We have to be exact in how we speak. He was actually building on a piece of the Gemara that says, Rab Chananya Amar Mehacha ki beged idim kol tzidkotenu ma beged zeh lo nima v'nima mitztaref lebeged gadol. Just as with regards to a garment, with every thread sewn together combines to form a larger garment. Every word we say, every word we choose builds a bigger story. All this is to say that little lies beget larger lies. And then we can pretty much justify anything. Our Torah teaches, Lo tisa et shem Adonai Elohecha lashav, ki lo yinakeh Adonai et asher yisa et shemo lashav. Don't swear falsely. Don't lie in a court of law. Don't use God's name in vain by swearing to lies. Lo ta'aneh berecha ed shaker. Don't bear false witness against your neighbor. V'gam netzach Yisrael lo yishaker v'lo yinachem ki lo adam hu lihinachem. God doesn't lie. You shouldn't lie. Time and time again, we are instructed not to lie. It tears at the fabric of society. That's what the Gemara was saying. And we have watched in real time the dangers of lies that lead to insurrection and attack. Last night, I asked you to make a small alteration to the way you think. I asked you to think differently about others. Today, I ask you to make a small change in the language that you use, because how we talk is how we think, not the other way around. When we lie, we do damage to ourselves. When we lie to others and they choose to believe those lies, we're still lying. Just to be clear, we tell ourselves and others lies in the positive and in the negative. We speak both internally and externally. We do it about ourselves, telling ourselves how bad we really are at things, how incapable we are of accomplishing things. We use self-degrading language to describe ourselves. We sometimes say, I was just being stupid. We convince others and ourselves of our own inability with the subtle little lies that we say. This is where you get a secondary sermon about the word overachieving or the phrase overachieving. There's no such thing. Just let that sit for a minute. There's no such thing as overachieving. If you have accomplished it, you weren't overachieving, you were achieving your capacity. It's not the other way around. Though how many times have people said that to us? Or how many times have we said that to ourselves? You know that if you have accomplished it, then overachieving is patently false. It's fine if you watch television and you enjoy the lies that people are telling you on television. If you don't mind the little alterations or the quoting out of context, whether it's done by CNN or by Fox, go ahead. Allow yourself to be lied to. But don't then perpetuate that lie by saying, I heard it online. Don't inflate, don't conflate to make your point, to make yourself feel more important, to feel smarter, and God forbid, to try and convince others you are right. You have all heard the story of Chicken Little. We teach the story to children so that they will grow up and get it right. But then somewhere along the way, we lose our way and we start doing it also. My synagogue, I say to other clergy, is much larger than their synagogue. My firm has more lawyers than your firm has. My company has more employees than yours does. Or maybe my net worth is greater than it is. Originally, Chicken Little was written in 1943 as a short film created by Walt Disney during World War II. The story was closely based on a fable called Henny Penny. And it is an anti-Nazi film showing the evils of mass hysteria. The point of the cartoon was to show how little by little Hitler was able to con the German people into believing the big lie of the 20th century. And that was that the Jews were the source of all of their problems, requiring a final solution. We know it is wrong when it comes to leadership lying to people, but yet we are so willing to believe that lie, whether it's them telling us or us telling ourselves. After all, we all do it. Harmless self-aggrandizement, we say. Over the course of this day, we will say the Al-Chet Shechatanu Lifanecha B'Dibur Peh, for the sin of defrauding people. Al-Chet Shechatanu Lifanecha B'Tumat Sfatayim, for the sin we have committed through the sin of foul speech. Throughout this sermon, I have used one synonym after the next for what is really just lying. I've said exaggeration. I've said amplification. I've said white lie, stretching the truth, alteration, inflate, conflate. But I could have easily used words like overstate, overemphasize, embellish, enhance, dramatize. We have so many words to describe what is one simple concept, and that is lying. The reason we have so many words for this is we hope we can find a way of making that behavior acceptable. And it's not. We want to save someone's hurt feelings, we say, because we had a good reason to lie. We want to spare someone some pain, so we tell a white lie. But in each case, we must ask ourselves, are we doing this for them? Or are we really doing it for us? Are we trying to avoid a fight instead of finding a kind way, a loving way to share a truth? I ask you to just take two statements of this year to heart. Be precise in your language and be kind. Yes, the truth can hurt, but it doesn't have to be cruel. And yes, it may take more energy and more thought and more time and more consideration to tell the truth in a kind way, but the reward is great. As our rabbis teach, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Kol hanoten pruta le'ani mitbarach b'shesh brachot, v'hamitbaiso b'dvarim mitbarach be'echadesrei brachot. Rav Yitzchak teaches that anyone who gives a penny to the poor receives 6 blessings, but anyone who consoles that person with words of comfort and encouragement receives 11 blessings. It's so much harder to say the right thing at the right time, in the right way, in the right tone, but it's well worth the effort. And if you choose that, we have a huge vocabulary at our disposal. How we talk is how we think. It's not the other way around. Any significant change in our ways of talking can lead to a change in the way we think. So now, we're going to turn to Yester. And we're going to spend the next few minutes remembering loved ones. And sometimes we'll remember those loved ones as they actually were. And sometimes we're going to remember those loved ones as we wished they were. We'll think about our relationship. We'll ask ourselves the question, were they kind to us? Were they loving to us? Or were they critical of us? Over time, the exact memories that we have of our loved ones will fade. We don't have to hold on to the negativity. That's not lying to ourselves. In some cases, and I pray in most cases, only the loving memories will remain. I pray that over time, only the perfect is what we recall. I pray that the challenging, painful memories that are lying in the truth of our hearts will fade in time. And I pray that every memory we have will be kind, their touch gentle, their words soothing and encouraging. So now we turn to the Yester Prayers. I'll ask you to take out your booklets. I would remind you that this is a significant way for our congregation to recall loved ones. Some that are found on plaques on our walls, and some that haven't yet made it to those walls. I would ask you, while we do this English reading responsively, to look through each page. Even if your loved one is not found on that page, maybe someone you know was. And so we continue, or we begin in this booklet on page 6. There are stars whose light reaches the earth only after they themselves have disintegrated. And there are individuals who memory lights the world after they have passed from it. These lights shine in the darkest nights and illuminate for us the path. Page